chapter 1. We're going to start talking about Proverbs for a while. Don't know how long we'll be in there, but we're going to start talking about Proverbs. We just finished up Ecclesiastes, I think it was. I talked about that for a while. And as Brother Hanks alluded to the other night, Solomon, as a young man, wrote the Song of Solomon, of course, there when he was young, and described his one true love, the Shulamite maid there. And then, as a middle-aged man, he wrote the book of Proverbs, and then he backslid for 20 years, and God used him to give us truths and principles about Ecclesiastes. So those are the 3 books he wrote. But Proverbs chapter 1, I've just got to read most of it tonight. It's such a wonderful, wonderful chapter. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity. To give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsel. To understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Now then, Solomon is talking to his son Rehoboam, as Brother Hanks talked about the other night, and telling his son some things. My son, Solomon says, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. For they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. My son, verse 10, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. If they say, come with us, let us lay wait for blood, let us lurk privately for the innocent without cause, let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as those that go down to the pit. We shall find all precious substance. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Solomon says, son, cast in thy lot, they say, cast in thy lot among us, and let us have one purse. Solomon says, my son, walk not thou in the way with them. Refrain thy foot from their path. For their feet run to evil and make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird. They lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privately for their own lives. So are the ways of every one that is greedy of gain, which taketh away the life of the owners thereof. Wisdom crieth without. She uttereth her voice in the streets. We won't get there tonight. But in chapter 8 of Proverbs, wisdom is personified, which means that wisdom is talking as a person in chapter 8 of Proverbs, and it's a personification of wisdom, and we'll get there. But here, wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets. She crieth in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates. In the city, she uttereth her words. So she really wants people to listen to. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. 3 groups of people there. Simple ones, scorners, and fools. Verse 23, turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. Then God says this, because I have called and you refused, I have stretched out my hand and no man regarded. But ye have set at naught all my counsel, and would none of my reproof. I will also laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you, then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. For that they hated knowledge, and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would none of my counsel, they despised all my reproof. Because they treated God that way, this is how God's going to treat them. Therefore shall they eat of the fruit of their own way, and be filled with their own devices. For the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. But whoso hearkeneth, the Bible says, unto me shall dwell safely, and shall be quiet from fear of evil. Wonderful verse, especially for young people. Whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely, and shall be quiet, the Bible says, from fear of evil. So in verse 2, the Bible says, Solomon wanted his son Rehoboam to know wisdom and instruction. Rehoboam was going to have to be willing to receive, to willing to get, willing to study God's wisdom. He was going to have to want it. And that's the same, it hadn't changed today. Why do we have some Christians that are victorious, some Christians that are faithful, some Christians that are really good Christians and doing God's will for their life and trying to be all they can be for Jesus Christ? Is because they want it. Some don't want it. Depends on your desire. The Bible says in Proverbs, through desire, talks about desire. So then he said in verse number 2, to perceive the words of understanding. So Solomon is warning Rehoboam that understanding will not come from opinions. It'll come from the spiritual discernment that God allows people to have because they want it. He said in verse 3, to receive the instruction of wisdom. One of the major reasons tonight that there are so many fools in the world is that they are not willing to accept truth as God sees it. They want to change things to please themselves. But wisdom comes from God. It does not come from man's philosophy, or it does not come from man's books. Wisdom comes from God. And so that means that you, that I, must submit ourselves into He who is wisdom. The Bible talks about Jesus has made unto us wisdom in 1 Corinthians. And so we must submit ourselves unto He that is wisdom if we're going to get in from God. It'll be a great day in our lives when we realize that we are nothing, we have nothing. He is everything and He has everything. And if we're going to get anything, it'll be from God if it's worth having. And so Solomon is saying, now son, listen to me. While Solomon was writing these Proverbs for and to his son, he was also aware that they would benefit, of course, you and I. In verses 4 and 5, he mentions 3 types of people who will benefit from these Proverbs, these 31 Proverbs that he is writing. Verse 4 and 5 says to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man, knowledge and discretion. Verse 5, a wise man. So it talks about 3 different kinds, simple, young man, and wise man. So 3 types of people who will benefit from the Proverbs are the simple. These are the ones who are seducible. They're very young. They'll have no foes in their life. Sin has not so attacked their lives and left them crippled and mangled up. They are the seducible ones. They're very young and very impressionable, it would be a good word. These are the simple people now. They're very impressionable. They are unaware of the dangers of sin. Young people are not as aware of the dangers of sin as older people are. They're just not. They think it's not that bad a thing. It's because they're simple. And God says, now listen to me. The young there would be a person that is a teenager, one who has not yet complicated his life. They're still teachable. There are non-teachable people, of course, but these are still teachable people. They will learn if you teach them. And I'm finding in Christendom, in our generation, that I'm seeing less and less, I can't talk about this very much, but I'm seeing less and less teachable people. People don't want to be taught anymore.